Test, test. Hello. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Excuse me. Right, hope everyone is doing alright. Um, excuse me. Yeah, I've got an interesting one today, hopefully, regarding my kind of previous life as a teenage protester. Well, partly that, partly regarding my masters as well. Um, so, what I'm talking about is the animal lab in Oxford. When I say the animal lab, um, there's one main central animal facility in Oxford, officially called the Biomedical Sciences Building. Here it is in wonderful stock photo form. Um, and here it is on some animal research opposition website. But the point is, let's look at it in the Google Maps. Um, um, so, what is it going to do? Here we go. So this building was constructed between about 2005 and 2008, 2009. It took quite a while. It was actually a bit longer than that, I think. It took quite a while because it was. Uh, no, I won't tell the full story now because that's probably something I should prepare for really with some actual photos. Um, well, I'll give a bit of context though. So here it is. So around like 2005, 2000, uh, yeah, 2005, construction on the lab stopped because the Speak in particular, the local animal rights group or local anti-animal research group specifically, was very opposed initially to primate experiments being planned at Cambridge. Uh, the acronym, I believe, stands for Stop Primate Experiments at Cambridge, Speak. And then they changed it to a K at the end for Oxford because the lab under construction at Cambridge was cancelled, ostensibly due to planning issues, but in practice, in no small part due to the opposition of the anti-vivisection activists. And well, thank you, Josh. I'll have to do a protest story stream properly some point. Uh, yeah, that could be a good stream, and I'll prepare properly for that so I can like get all the archive photos out and whatnot, because I'll have to dig through a little bit. But for today, I'll just kind of focus on the on the lab. Um, so construction kind of haltingly restarted um, in 2006, on and off. And at the start of 2006, in January, I was in Oxford with a couple of friends and saw a Speak demonstration. And not really knowing that much context, but knowing that animal research is important, I kind of set up an impromptu counter demonstration, and it snowballed into my being a bit of a face of the pro animal research movement. Kind of not exactly starting the movement because it had been going already in sort of think tanks and among academics, but um, I was the first to kind of bring it to more widespread popular attention. Um, so the actual facility cost something like £100 million. It was quite expensive. The majority of which ends up being security costs, or at least a substantial portion of which ends up being security costs because of the threats posed by the anti-research activists. And I'm saying anti-research activists partially because I'm biased, but also because I would like to distinguish them from animal rights activists as a whole, because I've met many relatively sensible animal rights activists. I've met some whom I would agree with on most issues. Um, but this particular brand of activists, like I say, I am biased against, admittedly, but they are, to my mind, quite irrational and quite bad at both achieving their own goals and at not impeding biomedical progress. Anyway, so that's why I uh, shouted and um, took to the media back in 2006 to support its construction, and indeed the lab, as you can see, is now built. Not that I can take anything approaching total credit for that. It was very much a supporting role that I played, but nevertheless, I'm pleased that it ended up being constructed. And as you can see, this is I'm not sure when this photo was taken, but um, May 2019. Oh, we go back to 2008. So there we go. Back in 2008, you can see it was quite the fortress. So it was. Oh, that one only goes back to 2010. Um, yeah, back in June 2008, it was still. No, it wasn't a building site still back then, I think. It was like functional at this point, but it was basically under kind of constant siege from the risk of infiltration and pop-up demonstrations and whatnot. But this was I came up to Oxford in 2010, and it was looking substantially better when I was actually doing my undergraduate. And well, that was yes, this was during my undergraduate. Anyway, doesn't matter. Point is, it's been up and functioning for a good few years now, and I was privileged to do one of my master's projects in this building, working with ferrets on a study looking at a laboratory test behavioral study looking at auditory perception in ferrets and how that works. Specifically, how they perceive pitch, what components of sound they use to understand differences in pitch. Because there's lots of processing going on in the ear and in, of course, the um, cortex and throughout the brain that determines how we discriminate the difference between a high pitched sound and a low pitched sound. Um, so the reason why I'm talking about this today and why I'm showing you this is that I came across this very, very cool website a couple of weeks ago, um, labanimaltour.org. I would highly, highly recommend this. Um, partially, so just to um, disclose my interest here, Understanding Animal Research are a fantastic organisation. Used to be called RDS, or the Research Defence Society. Um, when I founded Protest, the campaign group that was pro animal research back in 2006, we ended up working alongside Understanding Animal Research quite a lot because they provide a lot of very useful information about the importance of animal research. And while they were focused more on like public science communication as opposed to like grassroots activism kind of stuff, um, they were a very useful resource that helped us get the kind of the get in touch with scientists and get useful information to um, argue our case in favour of animal race research. So yeah, UAR, great organisation. Particularly if you're like a teacher or involved in education at all, um, highly recommended if you're doing any lessons about the topic. And crucially, they've been working on openness in animal research. Now, this I wasn't aware of this when I first checked, but the Google Map images actually makes this point really nicely. Is that back around when I was demonstrating about this issue, it was pretty locked down. It was kind of a siege mentality among scientists, and particularly among the academic administrators of universities and private companies involved in this research and so forth. Because they were receiving, death threats, investors were receiving death threats, companies that worked with them, like contractors, were receiving threats. It was, understandably quite a scary time to be involved in running this kind of research in the UK. Some of my friends, researchers who were working back then, received, substantial. I mean, I received quite a few death threats, but Sir Colin Blakemore, who was head of the Medical Research Council at the time, he received a firebomb on his front doorstep once that his, at the time, um, very young daughter opened up. So I think in the early 90s. Um, and fortunately, it didn't go off. It was poorly made, but that was sent by the Animal Rights Militia or Animal Liberation Front or one of these groups. Yep, in Century Bomb got sent to his front door, and they would send razor blades that they claimed to be infected with AIDS. Um, they dug up a the corpse of the farmer of guinea pigs who supplied the animal research laboratories. This was a pretty scary time for researchers to be facing off against some of these anti-vivisection activists. So, it was understandable to want to be secure and to want to try to, protect the identities of the people doing this research. Um, but that wasn't really sustainable, not least because by shutting oneself off, one isn't making the case to the public, who are ultimately the people who determine whether this kind of research goes ahead. Because if there's enough public backlash against just about anything, it either doesn't happen or happens in such a way that it becomes um, prohibitively difficult. So more openness was needed, and the Understanding Animal Research and Protest were both initially supportive of this, and UAR has done far more on the issue, not least because Protest wrapped up in 2011. Uh, so one of the projects that they've done in order to kind of try to perpetuate this culture of openness in uh, biomedical research using animals is to produce this lab animal tour, which is essentially a Google Street View style walkthrough of a number of animal facilities. Now, I've not been to the Pirbright Institute. I've been to MRC Harwell for a visit. I've done a training course at a couple of weeks training course at University of Bristol's facilities. But we're going to take a. So if you want to look around any of them, I was highly recommend it. And let's have a quick look at the Pirbright Institute because Virology Institute. I'm just not familiar with this facility. So I mean, we've got good PPI standards. Go through there. Oh, that's outside. Okay, livestock viruses. Okay, interesting. Anyway, we're just messing around there because the one that I'm interested in showing you today is the one I've spent most time in, which is the University of Oxford facility. Um, Now, I'm personally qualified or was qualified. My license has lapsed because I'm not doing this research at the moment, and it actually costs the lab quite a lot to maintain the license. You've got to like update it every year, and you've got to get licenses for the facility. So a site license covers the building itself, you know, whether it's rated to safely house animals, whether it's got the right HVAC systems, what kind of animals it can house, you know, are the enclosures big enough, all that sort of thing. Then you've got the project license, so that's a license that you specifically apply for each different set of experiments, and you've got to explain what you're going to do beforehand, go through a kind of risk assessment from the point of view of like harm to the animal and you know other risk factors, and explain you know how you couldn't use non-animal methods to get this data, or why it would be prohibitively difficult to do so, um, and what means you're going to use to ensure that you use as fewer animals as possible, though not fewer than you need, because it's in some ways worse to do an experiment with fewer animals, because if it's statistically unpowered, your whole experiment is useless, and you've got to kind of essentially throw the data out, or worse, it could be actively misleading. So it's a difficult balance to strike, but using as few animals as possible in as minimally harmful a way as possible, and you've got to kind of balance these priorities, obviously, but going through that balancing act is part of what the project license is, and then you've got PPLs, like sorry, it's PILs, PPLs. It's been a while since I've done the course, but you've got the personal license, which covers your individual, like the individual researcher's competency at undertaking um, the procedures, the specifically licensed procedures that are involved in animal research. So you get like general qualification on a species or a group of species. Excuse me. So, for example, almost everybody, everyone on the training courses that I did, um, gets a qualification in just like basic handling of rodents, um, and basic like surgical technique in rodents, and then you get additional add-ons to your license for either specific procedures that go beyond like the basic stuff you trained on. Um, Obviously, you've got to do training for these additional procedures as well, of course, uh, or for additional species. So, at the height of my legal powers, I was qualified on ferrets, rabbits, rats, mice, and macaques. Yeah, uh, to like handle and interact with them, because you've got to know quite a bit about each species, about their like specific behavior, about their you know, feeding habits and so forth, in order to like be able to interact with them in a research environment. Um, and in terms of specific like surgical procedures, I just had a bit of training on laparotomies and Splenectomies was the one that I um, did a kind of just as part of the training on a dead rat. It was had already been used for other experiments, and I removed its spleen in order to a couple of spleens um, in order to demonstrate that I could. And I've done some like intracranial recordings and basic neurosurgical stuff as well, though I haven't actually done a huge amount of that. Most of my neuro specific work with animals has been behavioral stuff. What's your favourite to work with? Rats. Ooh, actually, I say that. So rats are smart and much more friendly than mice. Mice are little bastards. Obviously, during my training, I treated them well and everything, but they would just like randomly bite you. You've got to be very careful with your, and it varies a bit by like strain. Um, but you've got to be very careful with your fingers. Obviously, you're wearing gloves all the time, but they'll like nip onto the gloves and they can get a bit of the latex off. Not latex, it's nitrile or whatever it is. But so mice are little nippy bastards, and of course, if you get one like biting onto your finger, you've just got to kind of hold it there and let it drop off because you don't want to like harm the thing. If you like yank it off, that could harm its vertebrae. So you've just got to kind of hold there, going ah ah ah. Um, but yeah, rats are considerably more intelligent, like social, and also there's an advantage to having an animal that's just like big enough to sort of pick up without like worrying as much about its utter tininess. Because mice, if you haven't spent much time around rodents, mice will like easily fit in the palm of your hand, whereas a rat is like sort of two palms. They're not huge, um, but yeah, generally, and this doesn't go so much for like wild type rats out in the um, out in the wild. Um, but lab rats are very placid and docile, generally speaking. At least Bragdorli and Wistar uh, varieties. Um, but that said, ferrets are adorable as well. So I did, and in fact, uh, is this the right? Um, no, so this is just the uh, right. So this is just the macaque facility. Um, so this isn't the floor that I spent most of my time on. Most of my time was spent a couple of floors down from this. In I was working with the ferrets, and we had a couple of like housing rooms, and then one big no, there were two housing rooms, just one I didn't go into at all because none of my ferrets were in there. And then some testing rooms that were mostly like behavioral testing. Um, and I would bring my ferrets through from their housing, pick them up and sort of hold them under the crook of my arm with their little head here and just stroke them like that, and take them down to the testing rooms where we'd have big cube chambers, anechoic chambers, so like double walled, so you can't hear through them, um, because you can't just like easily put a pair of headphones on a ferret to cancel out the noise. So you put them in a big box, which is essentially doing what the little like sound seals around here are doing for me right now. And you we expose them to a bunch of different like high and low pitched sounds, and they'd have to discriminate between them in order to get a little water reward. Um, so then I just like take them back down the corridor, and honestly, a lot of it was like pretty boring because you're just waiting for a ferret to run through its it's automated like program of behavioral tasks, just listening to this water clicker. If the water clicker stops, then it's not doing anything, and you check in. There's a little webcam checking on the ferret inside this chamber. So I'd have to kind of monitor that, make sure it's doing the tests. If it decides to take a dump in the test chamber, you've got to go in and clear that out and give it a little spray and like put the ferret in a different chamber so you can go and clear out the poop and so forth. Anyway, um, but they are very adorable and very like friendly, sociable animals like rats, but elongated and extremely curious. Ferrets will just like climb up you or like go ferreting into places. I wonder if that's why they call that. And they can be difficult to like keep track of. Sometimes they'll like try just running away and going all difficult places, but they're very adorable and lovely to work with. Um, Monkeys, however, are much smarter, but also can be bastards. Now, I've only done a bit of primate work, just uh, doing training, uh, and I haven't done any like surgical work on primates. But my supervisor, Professor Tupu Aziz, has, um, and several of my friends have, and uh, this is the Oxford Primate Facility that, well, if it were easier to do primate research currently, they would be working in. Currently, there's not that many projects going on here. I'm not sure. I don't think so. There is a uh, there is the COVID vaccine being developed at Oxford at the Oxford Jenner Institute, but and vaccinology group. But I don't think and that does involve some macaque research, monkeys, macaque rhesus macaques. Um, but I don't think the actual the vaccine testing on the monkeys is going on here. I think it's going on in Utah or somewhere, because this facility doesn't have like high end infection control. It's got appropriate levels of cleanliness and so forth. But, well, let's take a quick look in. So we'll go in through the main entrance corridor. Hello. Uh, so you come in here. That's a like airlock style thing where you can uh, uh, you know, an airlock style uh, uh, entrance, though that's not the main entrance facility. The main entrance is downstairs and uh, is like a kind of full airlock where you've got to like not exactly airlock, but full like clean room entrance facility. So you get changed in there, and you've got to like put on some overalls, then sort of slide your feet over, changing your shoes or putting covers on your shoes midway over, so there's no point that you're touching the feet on the clean side with the uncovered shoes. It's all lots of procedures you've got to go through to avoid bringing bugs in. Um, so let's kind of go through, go along one side. So these are obviously the macaques, Macaca malata, the rhesus macaque, and they are primarily used in like vaccinology and immunology and neurological experiments. We have a video of them training. Oh, sorry, that's not coming through the right input.
And I guess the new arrivals. They're in a neuroscience facility where basically all the work involves some sort of research into how the brain works. and rhesus macaques are used, or rhesus monkeys are used because the great similarity to humans. So the brain functions and has a similar structure to humans. So the
So
work involves, the majority of the work involves
I'll let
behavioral
her
training,
speak a little bit, but
and these guys will be at the initial stages of that training. So the first step is basically to get them used to us, to come forward, comfortable engaging and taking little treats. I'm using raisins here.
so this is
And things like, for example, starting them to
it's going
respond
to be
to
the
different
little, yeah,
targets.
the toucher.
So I would say
Um,
hold. So they
so
already
this
learned
is just
that.
basic behavioural training, and this is
And
the
then
kind of
once
stuff
they
that I
start
was
doing
doing
behavior
as
tasks
part
in
of
the lab,
my
they will be
training with them,
a bit more
because
familiar already with
you know
some
the training course I was going on was mostly just kind of familiarization thing with the macaques. You know, in order to actually work with them um, long term, you've got to do a fair bit more, and obviously to do actual
and it
surgical
takes a lot of
interventions,
time to make sure that the
you've got to have
operatory
quite a
comes
lot of
forward.
training, and in
Because
practice, most of the people
especially with
doing,
the cameras around, they would be a little bit
excuse me,
nervous coming out.
most of the people doing surgery on macaques in this environment are just qualified surgeons. Um, like my supervisor, Professor Aziz, is a world-renowned neurosurgeon. So, you know, the standard of care that the
You get to
macaques are
the
getting
surgeons to come
is,
forward
well, as we'll see in a moment at the surgical facilities, is comparable to most human patients.
So this
Now,
is like the beginning of the journey, if you like.
okay,
So
she's explaining
some of the
that.
reason why it takes so long is because we like
I'll,
to
I'll let
take
her
it
explain.
step by step, make sure that the animals are calm and able to engage or willing, to engage in some of the training or in all the training of the procedures. And it's really important that they remain calm throughout and
They're
they're
eager to get their
interested.
treats.
They will be involved in
Okay, so this is
maybe
one of
some
the
operations.
experimental
Sometimes
setups.
they will get
Um,
implants,
this is
so that the heads
probably
can be held.
single unit recording study. So I'll explain this. This is the implant that the researchers have put in, surgically implanted, in order to provide stimulation and recording from the monkey's brain during experiments. And it gets put in this box, and these boxes, like, they're introduced to them over weeks and weeks of training in order to get them like chill while sitting in this, because obviously you don't, aside from the ethical issues which you've got to be very mindful of, you don't want the subject just freaking out, you know, once they get into this little box. So they get trained to sit in there. They get this implant that during the experiment is hooked up to. Actually, this might be a wireless one. The tech varies, but either gets hooked up to some wires during testing, which then get removed when they're just sitting in their enclosure, uh, or it might be a wireless one, but
Still
probably not.
during some of the data recording, for example, if they engage in behavioral tasks in the MRI scanner, and because they're here for so long, it's really important that we
Mm.
have ongoing assessments of their welfare, obviously for their own welfare, making sure that they remain healthy, calm and stress-free, but also it's very important that they remain that way for the science. So we want to have normal animal models that they will basically produce good quality data. And the way we
Absolutely.
do that is basically a team effort. So we have a team of dedicated
For
technicians
reference, this is the
that I work
NACWO,
with,
the
a team
Named
of
Animal Care and Welfare Officer.
surgeons,
So
and
for each
obviously the
portion of the
research
facility,
team
there
as
will
well.
be a NACWO,
And we all
who is the
work
person
together
who's
on
like
an ongoing basis,
ultimately in
day-to-day
charge
evaluation,
of the
bringing
kind of day-to-day
bringing out
welfare of
minor
the
concerns that
animals
might have
who can like step in at any time if they want to change something in order to improve welfare, and is responsible for kind of directing the husbandry, distribution of food and so forth by all the technicians. So for clarity, when I say I've trained with these animals, I'm qualified to work with these animals. That's just being qualified to run experiments on them and to provide like basic care for them. The actual day-to-day care is performed by technicians who are like specialists in this and have done considerably more, or have got considerably more experience than me, a researcher who's done a few weeks training here and there. So we've got on the right here, we've got the like living facilities. Um, can't really see it behind the door, but there's the kind of cages in there, and then this cage is the sort of bars vita somewhere along here, but it's contiguous with this little window, and they enjoy sitting out and watching the technicians and occasionally students coming past. And as you can see, this one is rather interested by the camera person. So we'll take a little wander down the. Oh, sorry, no, we'll pop in this door first because this is the anaesthetic room, or the prep room. Um, this is the like little stepping over divider. This is a smaller version of it that I was mentioning earlier at the main entrance. So you've got the aseptic area here and the dirty area here. Obviously, this is maintained to a good standard of hygiene, but you want to maintain an aseptic surgical area, and it's useful to have little barriers to indicate where that is. X-ray machine for monitoring in real time, so that can be quite useful for working out like placement of electrodes. Um, and basically, this is pretty much what you'd see at. Obviously, you want a bit more space for humans. This is pretty much what you'd see in a hospital prep room. This is the actual surgical facility. Um, as part of my doctorate, I've spent quite a lot of time in primarily the John Radcliffe Hospital at their neurosurgical facilities. And while the rooms are a bit bigger there, basically the same kind of setup. Um, you've got a light magnifying system. You've got is there any stereotaxic rigs? They're probably stored away. Um, you've got surgical bed. Important is the hot air blanket because non-human animals obviously quite a lot smaller, and they have hot air blankets for humans as well, but body temperature regulation is particularly important for surgery on small animals because they just lose heat faster, and uh, anesthetics in humans and non-human animals can lead to dysregulation of body temperature. So, in order to optimize that, you've got to use a thermometer and keep the air blanket nice and warm. Got a anesthetic trolley here, which will be using sevoflurane or isoflurane or something um, in order to provide a general anesthetic combined with some other agent, depending on exactly what animal you're working on and what kind of uh, surgery you're doing. Um, Same kind of setup. Obviously, it's some of this kit is a little bit different from the stuff that you use on a human in terms of its like peak flow rate and the amount of gas you're using, but conceptually it's all basically the same stuff. and maintained to the same like standard of hygiene. Um, okay, and there's just a sign here indicating whether the surgical room, the theatre, has been wiped down to degree of appropriate aseptic control. So you flip this over when it's been cleaned properly, and obviously it goes through a full cleaning after each surgery. So, basically just a regular neurosurgical theatre. Say regular neurosurgical theatres. Obviously, neurosurgical theatres aren't particularly regular. If it weren't a little bit irregular, then I probably wouldn't be bothering to show you. But you know what I mean. So into one of the cage rooms here. Um, this one is getting a juice reward. They fucking love juice. I mean, I don't blame them. Like, juice is really good. But they go a bit mad for juice. Uh, and so this'll be, yeah, this is primarily a like single care room. As you can see, they've got these. Oh no, these ones are allowed between the area. They've got these dividers here, which allows them to both shut off areas in order to like protect one who, say, this one might have had surgery recently, so you don't want the other ones all like picking at the wound or anything. Um, so sometimes you want to like separate them uh, because they've recently had surgery and need a bit of time to recover, and sometimes like a couple of them gotten really pissed off at each other or something, so you want to like give them a bit of time to chill out. In which case you've got these dividers here that you just stick between the bars in order to keep them physically separated, but they can still see each other and communicate with each other. Uh, if they do have a really big argument, because obviously these are macaques are quite social creatures, you don't at all want to be like keeping them individually in their own like room, because that'll socially isolate them and cause a lot of stress. Um, if a couple of them do get super pissed off at each other for some reason, you can move them to a different room. Um, but they try to like keep them all together in the same group, as they're able to enhance social bonds. Uh,
Another type of enrichment we do is ice cups, which is small amounts of squash and forage mix sprinkled in frozen. And this
Forage
is
mix
something
is
for them
basically like a kind of
to
granola thing.
do.
Um,
Basically, they have to pick the forage out, they have to crunch the ice. It's just something different, a different way of delivering a form of food.
so
These are
enrichment.
the ice cups look like.
I'll let him.
It's just squash with forage mix, like I said. We give one ice cup per monkey, and we just sort of stick it through the bars in a place where it fit. There we go. Let go. Like that.
This grumpy old man.
Good girl. Ollie, mate. Good boy. Other enrichment we can do is stuff like these plastic bottles, drill some holes in, put forage mix, a little bit of cereal, some plain popcorn in, and put hay in. And this just helps. And there's little puzzle players to figure out, get all the food out.
So this is generally something that animal research facilities are very careful to do. Is you want to provide an appropriate level of enrichment for the animals. So this is the like technical term for just fun stuff, play, toys. You want them to be able to exist in as close a manner to their sort of natural, physiological and behavioural state as possible. And in the wild, animals are, particularly mammals, are using their intelligence to figure out puzzles and to, achieve goals, find food, find mates, etc. And if you don't give them anything to do, they become very depressed and behaviorally abnormal, and presumably their quality of life drops, and as does the quality of the data that you get from them. So, in order to combat this, they're given things to do, fun things, and monkeys love picking at stuff and getting searching through things. Foraging is called. Often the hay in their at the bottom of their cages, obviously it's all kept clean, and they don't just let poop fester or whatever, but they'll put bits of this cereal or popcorn or whatever in around the hay, so the monkeys can spend some time picking through it and finding little bits of food to munch on, and puzzle boxes and so forth. And you do this for mice and rats too, mazes to go through, or wheels to run on or whatever. But for monkeys, you want to kind of take it to a reasonably high level, because they are very intelligent animals, and
it's all the same stuff. There's different ways of.
And you don't want to leave them getting bored and engaging in inappropriate behaviors. When I say inappropriate behaviors, I mean basically manifesting symptoms of mental illness, which is what will happen if you don't give them appropriate stimulation. As in with humans, it might lack some of the higher cognitive functions that we have, at least to the same degree, but they are capable of most of the same actions that most of the same behavioral general areas of behavior that humans are, and presumably they're similar. Their experience is quite similar, so it's important for us to safeguard their welfare, and while using them in research is absolutely necessary if we want to achieve continued advancements in, particularly in the neurosciences. It's a pretty important responsibility for researchers and for those who are supporting the researchers to ensure that the subjects of their research are treated humanely. And so part of that is giving them stuff to play with. The monkeys here are very boisterous, and while these technicians make it look easy, they have a very difficult to develop relationship with their charges. I particularly remember when I was training, as we saw earlier, the little behavioral experiment where they would behavioral training, where they would have this little target, a plastic stick, and the monkeys are supposed to reach out and grab it, and they get a little reward. And it's an easy introductory training task. So you train them on this, and it gets them generally used to the kind of format of receiving food rewards in exchange for doing something simple, reaching and touching something. And the experiments that we actually want them to run, the behavioral experiments to undertake while in an MRI or with a single unit recording or whatever. These are involving pretty much the same basic action of reaching out and touching a touch screen or a button or something as part of the experiment. So getting them to just reach out and touch a little plastic target is a introductory step. And when I was trying to train them, I could barely get them to do that. And if you're not careful, the monkeys will start kind of training you. They'll figure out what's the least they can do to get you to give them a treat, and then they just kind of keep on doing that and not give you anything extra. And if you just keep on giving them treats, they'll just kind of keep on doing that. And sometimes not what you actually want them to do. Whereas the technicians here have a much better like established relationship with them and are capable of getting them to respond appropriately. So yeah, we've got another housing room here, and we've got a very chill customer just hanging out there. And after they've gotten used to the technicians, they're just very relaxed. Uh, Here we go.
I'm Anna Mitchell, and I'm a research scientist, and I'm interested in what
So this is
happens
the
in
actual
our brains
work
when we're
that's
trying to learn
being
new
done.
information and make decisions. The way that I do this is I work with monkeys doing behavioural and cognitive neuroscience. And we use monkeys because we think, just like humans, that they're very good at learning new information quickly and weighing up different decisions in order to be able to make the optimal choice. What we do is we get the monkeys out into transport boxes and we wheel them down to touchscreen
So yeah, these
computers.
are the
And we get them
boxes
to
I
reach out
mentioned.
and make responses to the touchscreens. And they do this for a reward palette. It's a banana flavoured palette that they enjoy. And then we get them to look at the touchscreen and present 3 different objects, clip art objects, on the touchscreen. And these clip art objects are very different. They're very colourful.
So
and they're
just to go back a
touchscreen
little bit
and
there, those face movements you can see it's the monkeys
the palette
making.
that they enjoy.
They've got the little either pellets or juice or whatever coming out of this spout here. So every time they get one right, they get a little reward there. So basically, they're just like sat there playing video games with tasty things being fed to them.
And then we get them to look at the touchscreen and present 3 different objects, clip art objects, on the touchscreen. And these clip art objects are very different. They're very colourful, and they're typical cartoon images of different objects. We associate one of those 3 objects with an 8 out of 10 probability of receiving reward, another object with a 2 out of 10 probability of receiving reward, and that third object is not associated with a reward at all. The monkey sees those same 3 images within a testing session, and then across days they see new objects, and they have to learn within the session and then across days quickly which ones are the ones that are giving them the reward. They work through about 300 trials per day, and we get the data from that. Then
Each
when
trial
we know
is
that
the
they've
like
trained up well in
individual
doing the task, then
poking
we
kind of.
want to intervene in their brain and change a little part of it in order to be able to see how that part of the brain is influencing their ability to learn new information or make these decisions quickly. So what we do is we do neurosurgery with the monkeys, and we inject a very small amount precisely into the particular brain structures that we're interested in. One particular area of the brain that I'm interested in is the center of the brain called the medial dorsal thalamus. And the monkeys, after the neurosurgery, recover quickly. We keep them in a quietened room and supervise them throughout and make sure that they're well and getting the medicine that they need. And then within about 24 hours, we've got them back in with the group in order to be able to integrate them back with their cage mates. We typically leave them for about another 2 weeks to be able to make sure that they're fully recovered before we get them back in to do the testing and the performance of the task.
Here they're just foraging.
And again, they're seeing
Looking
3
for
objects associated with different reward probabilities,
All of its
but they're
reward.
seeing new ones again, and then seeing new ones within the session and across days of testing. And again, we're interested in seeing how this part of the brain affects their ability to be able to learn new information quickly and then to make decisions quickly by changing within the session which particular object they're interested in. The medial dorsal thalamus is particularly critical for this. If you don't have your medial dorsal thalamus, then what we find is that the monkeys keep choosing all of the three objects. They keep sampling all three of them. They can't integrate that information to know which one is giving them the 8 out of 10 probability of receiving reward. Why we are doing this is that we are interested in obviously understanding how the brain works. So these studies are helping us advance our fundamental knowledge about how the brain is involved in learning new information and making optimal decisions in a changing environment. This type of information can help us then for understanding what might be going wrong in the brain of people who can't make new optimal decisions or learn new information. And potentially it could also help all of us to be able to make more optimal decisions or to improve our ability to learn new information.
There we go. Yeah, so that is, I believe she's in Professor Rushworth's group, and they do a lot of, they're the main users, I believe still, this was a couple of years ago, but they're still the main users of the monkey facility. Unfortunately, the facility does have, oh, we've gone past that, we've gone in the wrong direction. Facility does have a bit more capacity, but it's quite difficult doing getting all the licenses and everything, understandably, for this research. I've gotten all lost. I'm not sure which way we're going. So it's a bit like underutilized, really. Right, let's see if we can. Right, behavioral testing lab. There we go. Okay, so this is, I mean, this is basically the monkey version of the ferret testing chamber I was mentioning earlier that I'd worked with. So you've got a little webcam for monitoring the animal, checking they're okay while they're doing their experiment. Oh, they've got a few webcams. We only had one on the ferrets. You've got your little reward button. Okay, that was confusing me. So the video they showed earlier, they were talking about pellet reward, but the spout was dispensing juice. Here's the actual pellet reward apparatus. So they'll have a dispenser in here, and then the monkey gets to reach into the little box and pick it out. They've got a like joystick and touchscreen, so depending on the actual experiment being used, they can use either. And yeah, it's pretty like straightforward room. The monkey is wheeled in their transport box, all very chilled, and they go through the behavioural tests on the touchscreen. And they'll go in for, half an hour, maybe an hour at a time, depending on. It'll often just kind of go until, at least in the case of the ferret experiments, we just like run them until the ferret got bored. And when they get bored, they'll just like stop doing it. At which point you just like take them back to their housing to be with their buddies. Oh, hello. Someone's inquisitive. So yeah, like that's the majority of the lab, or at least the majority of the macaque floor. We, like I say, there's quite a lot of other floors here, amongst the many floors. Oh, I missed the MRI room. I'm sorry. So yeah, they've got their own MRI scanner on this floor, which is rather fancy. This is a really good facility. I'm glad it ended up getting built because it is probably the most advanced animal research lab in the UK, at least.
I'm Andrew Parker. I'm a professor of
Oh,
physiology
hello.
in the University of Oxford, and
Got quite a
my
few
research
lectures
is
from
looking
him in
at,
undergrad.
with binocular vision, how the two eyes work together in coordination. Now, if you've been to the 3D movies,
Okay,
you put
that
the
dates
glasses
this.
on in the 3D movies, or
That
used
dates
one of
this.
these 3D televisions, you've had this experience. And what's actually happening there when you put those glasses on is
Okay,
that your left
I'll.
and your right.
This is just gonna be an explanation of the testing. So do go watch this in more detail, but I won't just play all of the videos on stream. Um, Not least because I assume this is I assume this is copyrighted. I think it's got a copyright, yeah. So I mean, I suspect Understanding Animal Research aren't exactly going to have aren't exactly going to complain about my using their copyrighted stuff, but nevertheless, I'll leave a bit of the video for you to enjoy yourselves. And yeah, we're back into different prep rooms. This is the anaesthetic prep room for the MRI, and you've just got big scanner there. Everything here has to be non-ferromagnetic. So all of this will be aluminium, and because if that was steel and you get this too close to the MRI, you're gonna have a bad time. Um, and it's the design of all of this testing equipment that you can actually put into MRIs is quite interesting, because all of the if you're trying to do like an audio test, you can't have regular headphones because they've got magnets to drive the membrane that actually produces the sound. So there are special like pneumatic headphones and stuff that you can get that'll send like pulses of air to vibrate membranes. And there's special like piezoelectric motors and things that you can use for like actuators that function in MRIs. Anyway, I'm way off base. This is largely irrelevant, but vaguely interesting. Um, but all of these facilities you can see are basically they just look like a hospital. Um, you know, it's a bit sterile in the sense of it's not exactly the most comfortable place for humans. I say this as someone who spent many an hour wandering around the other floors of this facility, um, uh, with all my PPE on. But for the animals, it's pretty chill place. Um, and I don't want to like undersell. Obviously, these monkeys are exposed to the risk and pain associated with surgery, and while they're given appropriate painkillers, anyone who's been through surgery knows it's not a particularly pleasant experience. So we don't want to be just doing these experiments, willy-nilly. Uh, but considering just considering like the kind of standard um, of quality of life that they'd get in the wild, let alone in most zoos or whatever. I think this is a pretty good demonstration of how the not that I want to just disparage zoos as a whole. Some of them are perfectly good. Um, but I think that this site is a pretty good demonstration of how the actual standard of animal labs, the actual what goes on inside them, at least in the kind of developed world, is a very far cry from what you might see if you were watching um, anti-vivisectionist sort of propaganda. Obviously, I would say it's propaganda. I have I've been demonstrating in favour of animal research for 15 years now or whatever, so I am biased. Um, but the kind of walkthrough here, this virtual walkthrough, just absolutely reflects what I've seen on my training courses, and it reflects what I've seen in. If we go out back to um, here we go. If we go to the University of Bristol one, and go to their surgical theatre, again, like, oh, I think they've done it up since I was there. Um, well, either way, it's just, if someone told you that was like the operating theatre in a hospital, you'd just be like, okay. It's all very high quality, is what I'm saying, and the standard of care is excellent. And the reason why I wanted to kind of talk about this today was just that when I found this a week or two ago, this site, I was very pleased to see it because it's the kind of material that I wanted to see more of back in the day, back when I was doing these demonstrations, because the actual reality of a an animal research facility. Yes, obviously some of the experiments do involve blood and do involve surgery, and we shouldn't pretend that they're all like fun and rainbows. But the actual contents of these laboratories is a far cry away from what I think a lot of people imagine. And it's that like popular imagination that um, a lot of anti-vivisection like activists rely on, because if you go past one of the stalls in a city centre, obviously with the pandemic and everything, they're not doing it these days, but or I'd hope not. Um, but if you go past one of these stalls, you'll see the same like 5 or 6 images, all of which are taken from the 60s, 70s, most of which aren't even shot in the UK. But they're shocking and emotionally get an emotional reaction. So that's what they rely on. And when there's nothing from the kind of pro-research side showing the reality of what goes on in one of these facilities, then there's nothing to counter that misinformation. Whereas this site provides exactly that. It provides just literally a view inside the facility, discussions with the researchers, with the technicians, and like I say, it's absolutely congruous with my experiences inside these facilities. Um, I can't claim to be a very long-term worker in one of these, but I've spent several months, like 3 or 4 months of my life working in specifically the Bristol and Oxford labs. Um, uh, a good chunk of the training course was outside of the lab itself, but I've spent a fair bit of time in both these labs, and they are they're places of work, but they're not they're not unpleasant places of work, and they're not unpleasant places to live for the animals as best we can tell. Um, so videos of let's have a look. It's an MRI safety video, because there are a few good ones. Here we go. Big magnet plus metal. Um, oh, let's find this one.
Home, because you happen to have an MRI, because it could be dangerous. First, when you've got it straight, you stick the magnetic field, pop the ring pulleys over, and place it in the high magnetic field, and then fall over gravity. It's going to take a while to fall down. You can also take this aluminium ball,
It's aluminium.
coil, and throw it in the coil.
Okay, so this isn't the. This is cool, but not the like dangerous stuff. Also, I think the magnets on like the actual scan program isn't on. I think that's just the helium pump. Let's see if we can get a. Because I swear I've seen one of like proper. There we go. MRI versus chair. Thank you very much, Amy. That's what we were looking for. Yeah, this is the one I've seen as well.
Alright, Alan, get on now. Top? Yeah, yeah. Come on, it's almost off. Come on. Alright, be careful.
It's them trying to prise it off.
Take a picture of Alan.
Technically, they probably should have shut that down, but the thing is, if you like shut it down midway through, um, it emergency shutdowns can cause damage to the magnet, and it takes like hours to get back up online once you dump out the helium. So, ideally you don't want to be just stopping midway through because some idiot pushed their desk chair a little bit too close. And obviously, if you get in the way of that, that can be really nasty. Which is why, if you ever go anywhere near an MRI in like a professional context, you get the course. Uh, there are like safety training courses that you have to go on, and it's all very boring. Excuse me. But yeah, so I figured I'd just take you on that little tour. Um, as I've said, I will do a like proper protest episode some point to talk about my um oxygen cylinder one. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, that's not good. Ooh. Um, yeah, I will do a proper one talking about my experiences and my actions circa 2006. Um, doing demonstrations in favour of animal research, but the whole story, because it's quite a good story, and yeah, but I hope you enjoyed my little tour of the Oxford Macaque facility, um, because I did. Yeah, we can have pictures of teenage Laurie. Because I did contribute, I think, in a meaningful way to getting that place constructed. Its construction had halted and was kind of on and off at the time. Um, but yeah, having that kind of full circle from when I was 16, helping to get it built, to I was in my 20s, uh, working in there and uh, studying for my masters in there. Um, and I saw this site the other day and just thought that's a really wonderful method of outreach and of communicating the yeah, I do get to name drop quite a few celebrities. Uh, but yeah, this whole site is wonderful. It's a great way of communicating um, the both the importance of animal research and the fact that it is conducted in a humane manner. Um, and I think unless one wants to argue that we should be kind of completely um, ending animal research for like deontological reasons, or I suppose virtue ethics reasons, uh, the impact of it has been so positive for both humans and non-human animals that while it certainly does cause, it can cause pain, um, and we don't want to be using these animals lightly, uh, the welfare of them is taken very seriously. And if we're going to undertake this research, which I think we very much should, it's good that it's being undertaken in such a responsible manner. So yeah, thanks for watching, folks. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will be back on. I don't have anyone formally lined up Wednesday, um, so if I do get anyone, I'll probably post about it tomorrow or Wednesday. If I don't, I will talk about something else. Um, so yeah, I mostly post on the Twitters to update about the stream. So follow me there and like, comment, subscribe, whatever. Um, and yeah, have a good evening. Thank you very much. And big thank you as well to Understanding Animal Research, who I didn't get any permission from. I probably should have dropped them a line. Um, uh, in fact, if anyone from Understanding Animal Research wants to come on at some point, I'd love to have a chat. It's actually there? I'm sure the whole staff uh, has turned over since. Oh, Wendy Jarrett. Okay, no, I do. I do know Wendy. Um, I wonder how she's doing. Oops. Okay. Anyway, I'm just going over people now. That's completely irrelevant to what you're interested. So maybe I'll drop one of them a message at some point to see if they want to come on for a chat. Um, but yeah, in the meantime, I hope you all have a good evening, and I will catch you later.